what's up, guys? Let's talk a little bit today about this is kind of a subject that came up sort of at work today, talking with a coworker of mine, and that's to talk about the effects on the operational level of battle that come from tactical decisions, and they're things that most people typically do not think of. And so, how the specific conversation came up was we were discussing, in Iraq, that it was common, TTP, common tactic that if we were, on the road, if anyone got in the way, you would not stop or slow down for personnel in the roadway. And the reason for this is for the most part, it's pretty simple. It's that you cannot let the civilians dictate the military operation in a way that may lead to friendly casualties and give the enemy an advantage. I.e., if the enemy finds out that all they have to do is put a family or a kid in the street and they'll get you to stop, well, then that means that they can set up an IED and or small arms ambush there, and all they have to do is put a kid out and they know that they can get you to stop. And I kind of expanded on that in that, in a lot of parts of Iraq, particularly because most of the IEDs were command detonated, i.e. there was somebody there with his hand on a button, or he had the actual wires to touch to a motorcycle battery, those sort of things, especially in the early days. So one of the easiest tactics to sort of counter IEDs was, if you were on open stretches of road, was just to put the pedal down and floor it. Armored Humvee probably goes, 45, 50 mile an hour at top speed. So you imagine a guy who's looking at you from 200, 300, 500 yards away, and he's seeing you go down a road, and he's trying to time exactly when to hit the button, because obviously there's some sort of delay between the button and when it hits the IED and when the IED goes off. And if you're going 50 miles an hour, and he's got to get you within 20 or 30 yards, maybe within 50 yards if it's a humongous IED, to do much damage, that's really difficult for him. And so what I was kind of discussing is that, what people typically, the simplest thing people talk about is that, we have to choose the well-being of American forces over over civilian, indigenous folks in that sense, which I think is accurate. But what gets lost is the effect on the operational ability. So if you guys don't know the difference between tactical, operational, strategic levels of war, it's actually very complex. There's operational art, operational science, but the easy way to think of it is operational art is the connection of the tactical details with the strategic goal, i.e., how do we connect the company level raids that we're going to do this week with the thing that we want to accomplish in this campaign in the Al Anbar province from a political standpoint. How do we connect all those things together? And so obviously that includes a lot of things. So what I brought up, and what I think a lot of people don't think of that is really interesting, is in this particular example, so take the friendly casualties out of it. Take the actual saving of American lives, or saving American, casualties out of it, and think of it, think of it from an equipment and a mission standpoint. So I'll use my second deployment, for example, because I have a clearer memory of that, just because of my position in the hierarchy. So at the company level, we only had 4 or maybe 5 vehicles that were with us at any one time. We were almost entirely foot mobile, with the exception of the vehicles that were for the QRF, which is very common. The Marine Corps in general is very foot mobile. And so you have a company, so you have 4 platoons, roughly 150, 175 guys, kind of depending. You have 4 vehicles. So now imagine the scenario: we're out and about, and we're on the highway, and somebody comes and stands in the middle of the road, and so we stop for them, and so we hit an IED, or we hit a small arms ambush, or even something much less dramatic. Somebody jumps out in the middle of the road, and so the driver jerks the wheel into the ditch. Guys who've been deployed, especially to Iraq, putting Humvee in the ditch, Humvee in a canal, freaking happens way too often over there. So now this vehicle's out of commission. So that company has lost, in our case, 25 or 20% of its mobility as far as vehicles go. And so now think about how that affects the mission. So if you have 4 Humvees, you can roughly fit 1 entire platoon in those 4 Humvees, but they are freaking super crammed, and it's terrible. So now if you have 3 Humvees instead, could you physically fit all the people in there? I don't know, maybe, but you'd be super crammed. But now, 1, they're not going to be able to take as much stuff with them: water, batteries, food, things like that. So they're not going to be able to be out by themselves as long as they could with more vehicles. Now imagine that you have fewer vehicles but the same number of people, and you do hit an IED. So the chances of casualties, if you double, or if you add 50% to the number of people in a vehicle, goes up, I'm not going to say it goes up double, but it goes up pretty dramatically. And so the chance you take more casualties goes up precipitously. And then now the number of operations that a person can conduct are severely affected. So, for example, let's say it was the first vehicle in the convoy, which is very typically a gun truck, so i.e. a Humvee that it's got 4 captain's chairs and then a gunner, and it's usually the most armored of the group. So say that's out of commission. Well, so now your most effective gun truck at the light infantry level is gone. So one, now you may have another one. In this case, we had 2, so you may have another one to move up there. But now the rest of them are kind of the open-backed Humvees that are just fit for putting troops and hauling stuff in the back of them. So if you wanted to use them, let's say you're in engagement in the middle of the street and you wanted to pull up a gun truck to give you some support, you can put a guy in the back, put a machine gun, have him put the bipod on the roof. We did those sort of things, but he has way less protection. So now instead of being a reasonably effective mobile lightly armored gun platform, now you essentially have a dude standing on top of a fucking pickup truck with a gun. So effectiveness goes way down. And now stress on the vehicles goes up. So where you used to have 4 or 5 vehicles to spread out the load, now you have 3 or 4. So the vehicles are going to take more stress, which means they're going to break down more often. They're going to go through more fuel relative to the number of vehicles that you have. And now the amount of people and things that a company commander can move around on the battlefield are diminished, so it's going to take him longer to do stuff. So if you wanted to move a significant portion of the company, or let's say you want to move the entire company, and you got yourself a hold of a 7-ton, and now you only have 3 Humvees instead of 4, it's probably going to take you an extra trip, and that's a lot, depending on where you have to go, because the road structure over there is so terrible. So the effect that it has on your ability to do those sort of operations and the actual operational level, the operational art in this case, are very dramatic. And so let's use this one example, and so because we're talking about it, we could kind of expand on some other decisions that I know as a junior Marine, this shit always bothered the fuck out of me, because I was one of those, I never really gave a shit about wearing body armor. I didn't really care. At this day, I guess I don't really care that much. It's super hot over there, and then the guys you're fighting, they're usually carrying like an AK and a chest rig that's got 3, you've seen the pouch, you've seen the rigs before. It's usually got like 3 or 4 pouches on the front. And maybe like a bottle of water. Like those dudes will be out all day, 1 bottle of water, and they're fine. Like they are hardy people. Talk whatever shit you want about them. They're hardy, and they are just mobile in a way that we will never be mobile over there, because we carry too much shit, too many vehicles, too much equipment. And so you get in these engagements, so you kind of get in these sort of running patrols, versus these guys. And it's like, man, like they can go all day, because they're not carrying shit. And we're carrying 100 pounds of stuff, sometimes more than that. So I was always like, man, fuck this. Like, why do I have to wear my vest? Why do I have to wear my helmet? And the other thing that is like, we had to have our sleeves which I still think is stupid, but we had to have our sleeves all the way down and cuffed at the bottom. If you got caught with rolled sleeves, you get NJP'd. It's supposed to be to protect you from burns and stuff like that on IEDs, because we got hit with so many of them. But then when you actually kind of step back and think about it, so not just at the tactical level, or not just you as an individual, you have to think of it from a commander's level. So let's say I'm a squad leader, which I was, so I have 12 guys under my command. So now let's say I got 50% of the guys wearing armor, 50% don't have any armor. We get hit with mortar barrage or whatever. The chances that the guys without armor become casualties massively increased. I don't know what the percentage is. It's definitely higher. So it's not that I don't care about them on a personal level. It's that, okay, so now that they are casualties, they're no longer able to be used to me in a military operation. So my effectiveness tactically and or operationally, depending on how far up the operation we want to talk, go down. So that's why you have to do and carry some of the things that you do, and it definitely gets annoying and you don't like to do it, but that's the connection to the connecting the tactical the tactical details with the strategic goals, the political goals that come into that. But I thought this might be interesting stuff for you guys. Remember, only the hits count, and you can never miss fast enough to catch back up.